Welcome to Align with Ummi. Today on the podcast, I have Patricia Assui Reed, a veteran, merchant, and communications executive. Thank you so much for being on, Patricia.
Thank you so much for having me.
I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of background on you before we start and dive in. Patricia has operated at the highest levels of luxury retail and brand strategy for over 25 years, from buying floors at Ralph Lauren, ABC Carpet and Home in New York City, which is one of my all-time favorite stores, to also roam about. I miss that place a lot. And she also headed Tiffany & Co. in Brazil. She has worked in iRetail to launch global brands like Diane von Furstenberg, Christian Louboutin, and Goyard. She's also created Iguatami Talks Fashion, which is a large fashion conference that brings global fashion industry leaders, international media, and luxury voices together annually. And more recently, she has built Matriark, a luxury multi-brand boutique that was in the Hamptons and now it's become more of a multimedia company with a newsletter and a podcast. So You've quite a lot of experience, and we're so happy to have you. Patricia, before we dive into what you're doing now, who would you say you are in this season of your life, where you are right now?
I think I am a grown woman with a lot to give back in general and a lot to learn still. I'm like a student.
Student and a teacher. I like that so much. So when you hear the word alignment, what does it mean to you in real life, not just in theory?
Alignment to me is to live in accordance to your inner self, your real self, and also your core values. I think it's just something I try to be every day. It's not so easy. It's easier said than done, but I think it is an effort to really live according to who you are and not who other people want you to be.
Yes, authenticity. We're all looking for that. And it's not easy, right? Every day, as you say, you got to work at it and keep working
Yes.
at it. So, what was happening in your life when Matriarch became more than an idea for you?
You know, I like you read it at the beginning. You're kind to read a little bit of my bio and to share what I've been doing professionally. And it's been really fulfilling. But I also personally have seen a lot of inequality in all businesses, really, and everywhere that I touched through my career. And I really thought I wanted to do something about it within my reach, you know, something that I could do and using my own skills and my experience. And I started, you know, I remember I used to go to dinner with these friends of mine. Once a month, we would go out with my girlfriends, and we would complain about how things were so unfair for women. We were all sort of in the same industry, and then I got tired of complaining, really, and decided to do something about it in my own way, in my small way.
It takes small steps to make change, right? I love the name matriarch, and you've spelled it a little differently, but the word holds so much power. What does it represent to you as a leader, as a woman, in all of the background that you have and where you're going?
I wanted to convey the power of female leadership. I think, again, we're talking about equality and not necessarily dominance, you know, and really having a balance between male and female leadership. And I don't even think about male, female as just gender, but also energy, male and female
Yes.
energy.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important to have both. You know, I think from my experience, and it's still continuing, that there's a huge imbalance. And it's important for us to support female leadership and female energy in all aspects of life, I think.
Talking about energy, was there a particular woman or a lineage that inspired you or shaped your understanding of what matriarch energy is?
I've been impacted and inspired by so many women in my life, not just my mother, but my friends and strong women that I worked with. It's not just one person. And obviously, women in the media, people that you see out there doing things and impacting businesses and people's lives. So it's not just one person, but you know, Melinda French Gates, for example, is somebody that I look up to because I think that she uses her influence, power, and money for good, but also encourage businesses. She's not just doing philanthropy. There's many, many voices and many women in my life.
A mosaic. Was there anything that you had to unlearn about success as you moved through your career to create matriarch in a way that felt aligned for you?
Yes, many things. You know, I worked in large corporations. You know, I learned a lot of the big structures and the big money behind things. And when you're doing your own thing, and unless you have big money backing you, which wasn't my case,
Okay.
you need to really let go of perfectionism. You know, I think I've worked in luxury for a long time. In luxury, everything looks flawless and everything looks just as such, but it takes a lot of effort and money for that to happen. And it's never really perfect, but it has such a flawless execution, you know. And when I started my store, I had to sort of improvise, and I had to be like, well, it's not going to be perfect. It's just going to be great. I should be okay with it. So that was number one. And I think just also the idea that success has to be big. It doesn't have to be big. I think you can be successful doing things locally in your community, little by little, in your own way, within your own power, within your own reach, and everybody can do it. It doesn't have to be enormous,
Right.
an enormous amount of business to be impactful.
Going back to when you had an actual storefront, what was your process in terms of selecting and curating mostly women-owned businesses, I believe, right, in the store?
Yes, the idea, it was an interesting thing because when I first started this idea, it was supposed to be a digital platform. It was going to be an online marketplace. Also, you know, and this is how entrepreneurship is never linear, because for me, that was an important concept, but I was moving my family, my husband and I were moving to the Hamptons.
Okay.
And I was in New York City where, you know, you have everything. And moving to the Hamptons meant that I wasn't going to be able to build this platform so easily. I would have to commute to New York City a lot. I would have to do a lot of things that sort of defeated the purpose of us moving to the Hamptons. And I have little
Sure.
kids. And again, I think it also shows that when you have a family, or women in general, when you're trying to raise kids, you just have to pick your battles. And so I said, you know, I'm not going to be able to do the online thing now. I'm going to have to sort of bench this idea. And then I decided to open a store in the Hamptons because it was, again, it was within my reach here, right? It's something I
Yeah.
could do, and better done than perfect. And it turned out to be really successful. And at the time, yes, I was looking for brands, but because I've been working in fashion for a long time in retail, I had some relationships, but I also had a list of brands that I admired, that I saved on my Instagram folders, that I
Okay.
loved. And I literally just cold called them. You know, I found their information, and that was very hard to do also. That's another thing I think women have to get over, really, if you want to do things, is the fear of rejection, because that paralyzes people, and it paralyzed me for a long time. And I just had to call them. To my surprise, most of them said yes. So that's a little bit of the process. It was more complicated than that, but it was basically having a huge list of brands that I loved, starting from top to bottom, to call them and email them and pitching and sharing my idea to see what
Yeah.
resonated with people.
Right. It takes courage, you know, and what can they say? No, right? I mean, it's hard. I agree. So on those hard business days, what did alignment feel like for you when things are uncertain or heavy, or feeling that rejection in the background?
Those are very hard days. I think that when you're starting also, it's really hard not to take personally. So that was always my exercise. My exercise is, this is not personal. I don't know what the reasons are. And sometimes I would know. Sometimes I would say, you know what, this brand is definitely not aligned with what I'm trying to
Yeah.
do. You know,
Right.
when you think of it, their priorities are different. So that actually is the right thing to do. Maybe I shouldn't have asked because it wasn't the right brand. So I think you need to look inwards and need to be at peace with the rejection. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people say rejection is redirection, which I think is very true. I think that what's meant to be for you will be for you. And you just have to be philosophical about it and quickly move on. If
Yeah.
you keep dwelling on that, you're not going to move on. You're not going to keep going, and you should
Right.
keep.
In yoga, that's that idea of detaching. So you do the action for the action, but not looking for the fruit of your action, or the reward, or that great feeling, because you may not get it all the time. And if you have these expectations, then it kind of snowballs, right? So it feels like you have a lot of yoga ethos in you. Do you practice yoga, meditation?
I was a big yogi when I was working at ABC Carpet and Home, actually,
Okay.
and then I had children and it fell on the wayside. But I'm trying to get back to my practice because it definitely helps me a lot.
Movement, asana, meditation, breath work, or all of it?
I do vinyasa yoga, and I do meditation, and I did breath work. My first session actually was here. It was an event that I threw with this wonderful woman called Celine Antoine. She lives in Shelter Island, and it was an amazing session and something that I want to get back into.
I think, as you can see in the world, athletes, business leaders, you know, politicians, all of them seem to be turning inward, mindfulness, spirituality, and it seems to be helping their life. And in so many ways, of course, in their professional lives, but even at home, in even just moving through their days. So it's being in yoga for over 25 years to see the switch and to see that science is also backing a lot of what we knew for a long time, but it's starting to catch up. When you're holding so many roles, you're a mother, you're starting your business, and now you're moved on to this other multimedia platform. How do you protect your energy when you're holding so many roles?
This is one of my largest challenges. It's been something I've been taking a long time to learn, especially because I have a home office. And so everything is meshed, you know. One of the things that you do have to have the discipline and you have to really calendar your life. That's what it works for me.
Okay.
So it's like if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist, you know, and I have time to stop and a time to start. And sometimes I don't. A lot of the times I go over because I'm not finished. But I think you have to have this discipline of, for me, putting things in the calendar and know that, okay, this is the time now I have to stop. And so, for example, you put all your say obligations or your meetings in the calendar, but you also put time to walk outside or to take breaks or to go to the gym or to see
Amazing.
friends. You have to put that in advance. Otherwise, if you don't build it in, it doesn't happen. Or life sort of takes over and people pull you from this side and that side. I think you have to calendar things and you have to put boundaries around yourself.
I love that. And I was just going to ask, do you put time in your calendar for yourself? Because that's something I teach a lot to my students. It's not even a thought really that comes across many people's minds. You always think of your to-dos or your calendars as an outward energy, but bringing time for yourself, as you say, I love that. You see, you're in nature, you're being with your friends. So many happy hormones come when I'm with my girlfriends having a cup of tea, and then I can get back to work, right? It's like a reset almost. So do you do that in the middle of your day, or do you usually shuffle it towards the end of the day, or it just depends, I guess?
Working out, for example, has to be at the beginning of the day because then my day takes over. It's not happening now in winter just because obviously I live in the East Coast, but we try to have a stand-in date with this group of women that we go walking together, even though sometimes it doesn't happen, but at least we make an effort and it's in there in my calendar. So we put that in and we save. So there's a meeting happening at the time. I decline the meeting because I do have that appointment. And then, and then with my husband, you know, put down some dates and the calendar. So you have to do it because otherwise there's always something. There's always something that's happening that
Always.
take over. Yeah.
You're right. And there's only so many hours in the day. And now we know sleep is ever important. And that's something I try to protect as well. I'm guessing that you also do that.
It started because I work from home. A lot of times I put my kids to bed and after that, and I'm sort of a night owl, and then I would start
Okay.
working and writing.
Right.
Before I knew it, it was midnight, you know, so I am now trying to really say, no, I have to be done by 10. So
That's interesting because many people there are the morning larks, they say, and the night owls. So if you're a night owl, how have you worked on that idea? Because sometimes people are more creative in the evening, right? When they technically should be sleeping. I'm curious about that. How were you able to navigate that? And maybe you're still working on it, but how does that go for you?
you know, it's really hard, and I think we've been really holding our bedtime with the kids in a very strict way because
Okay.
if that falls on the wayside, I will be working until midnight.
Right.
If they go to bed at 10, I can't work until then, and I do want to spend time with them. But we have an 8 o'clock, even though they're teenagers, we have an 8 o'clock going to the room situation where we can spend some time with them. We chat and everything.
Yeah.
By 8:30, 8:45, I'm out of the room,
Okay.
which means that then, you know, they might go to sleep or not, but I'm out of the room, which means that
Right.
then I can work and then have a solid at least hour because obviously I'm working during the day. But this
Right.
is the time where I think if I need to do a lot of creative work or if I have to really think about some really important writing for my newsletter, for example, this is the time that I would do it.
Okay.
And then the rest of it that doesn't require so much creativity or it's more structured things, I can do it during the day.
I think it's ever evolving and probably again in every season of your life, perhaps when your children are out of the house, that could change again, right? So,
Yes, for
yes, I
sure. I
get
think you have
that.
to just kind of roll with it and adjust your schedule. Yeah. for sure.
Right. What kind of awareness do you think women in general need right now to stay aligned? Like as you're working on it, I'm working on it, to stay aligned with their energy and their values. Like what kind of awareness do you think should come a little bit more to the forefront for women in general, if you could speak to that?
I think women tend to really, because we are caregivers, even if you're not a mother, obviously you're a
Mm,
caregiver because
yeah.
you care for your friends, you love your family, you tend to want to help your community. I think we need to always keep in mind that we're going to show up much better if we take care of ourselves, and that is a
Mm,
cliche, but it's so true.
yeah.
If you're sleep deprived, if you're not eating well, if you're not working out, you're not going to be able to show up for people like
Mm,
you want to. So I think
right.
it's not selfish to want to take a little moment, and stay aligned and take a deep breath and take care of yourself, and then do your things, then the things that
Mm,
are important to you. And to stay aligned with your values and who you are, you have to be able to say no. You have to be able
yeah.
to, and you can practice that. It's not easy for most of us. And I
Hmm.
always tell, for me, I'm okay. I'm a very straightforward person, so it's easier for me than most people probably. But I have many friends that had such a hard time, and I always give them tips. I always say, start with maybe. You don't
I
have
like
to
that.
say yes.
Mm,
Then you say maybe, and you can always say, you know what, I decided I'm not doing this later when you feel
right.
like you don't have to have a confrontation.
Mm,
But don't say yes to things and then regret, because then you're going to want to do it, or you're
right.
going to flake on people, which is even worse, right?
Right.
So learning how to say no, it's a huge part of it.
It happens to me when somebody's trying to push you into a commitment or, a meeting or whatever it is, and they'll just pull out their calendar right in front of you and ask you to pull out
Mm,
yours. And that gets a little intense. I just say, I have some things that are in flux or flow on my calendar, so let me get back to you. I like the idea of maybe. I like the idea of pausing maybe and like holding on to not make decisions in a moment that you don't necessarily feel comfortable.
You can always do it very kindly. I think it's kind to tell people the truth. It's
Yeah.
kind to say, I'm not quite sure, let me get back to you, than to say, I'm
Mm,
going to do it and then do it and resent that person or show up in a
right.
bad mood
Correct.
or flake on them. I think it's much kinder to just say, I'm not quite sure, let me get back.
In this culture of immediacy, answering the text or the email or the call right away is just
Mhm.
become part of our nature. And so also responding to someone who's asking something of you directly can also feel like it needs to be that urgent. But as you are so
Yes.
nicely saying, it is not.
I think that goes back into really feeling like your time is equally valuable.
Mm,
That other people's time are not more valuable than yours just because they might be in a higher position in terms of the company or because their time is not more valuable than yours. Just honoring the time that you take for yourself too, it's really important.
that's really well said. What are a few things that you like to do for yourself in terms of self care or just what makes you happy, joyous on your own or with others?
For me, I'm very lucky. I live in such a gorgeous place. So for me to be
Mm,
outside
ah,
in nature, and lately, even though I can't because it's all snowy outside, but
I know.
gardening and I think cultivating things. I think I read something about, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but I read something about shifting from consuming to creating.
Mm,
And I think that is within my values now, that yes, I've been a consumer, we are consumers, but I also want to create something. And you don't have to like be an artist to be creating stuff. You
right.
can plant a garden, you can do, whatever. So I think I'm sort of in that phase now. So gardening, or at least visiting gardens, taking in nature, being with my kids. I love reading and listening to podcasts and things like that. So that's what I want to do.
I love that, what you said, consuming to creating. And you could create a meal. You could
Yes.
create, I read recently in your newsletter about your new flowers. I forgot the name, starts with a B. They're coming or they're under the snow right now? I'm not sure.
Yes, I mean, I have several of them, but I think one of the things that I feel interested in is it's not just the gardening. I don't know if I have a green thumb or not. I'm
Okay.
exploring the idea. I like the idea of having living things. I have dogs and I have living things, and I don't know. I think that to me, it's like life affirming. it also keeps you grounded because it's nature. I also think that when you're cultivating something, when you're creating
Mm,
something, whether it's a meal or a plant or whatever, your mind, your focus shifts from your own head and yourself
mm.
to something else.
Yes.
And I think that's important. So you're not just constantly thinking about you, and you focus on other things.
I took an Ikebana class actually in New York City. It was like one of the highlights of my time during winter. It was lovely because, as you said, you're creating something in a very simple way, right? And there is, yes, there's structure and there's certain ways to do
Yes.
different ikebanas, but the end result brought me so much joy. It was just a little quiet presence on my desk or in my room, and I think when you can, like, you found what works for you, I think it's so nice, and you have to keep exploring, right? So for anyone that's
Yes.
listening out there, it may
Yes.
not be flowers for you, it may not be gardening, it may not be
Yes.
cooking, but keep
I think
looking
also,
outwards.
yes,
Yeah.
I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was going
No,
to
no.
say one of the things that is, I think the Ikebana thing for you, like it's also the winter and having beauty,
Mm, yes.
people always, they discard things like when we talk about fashion and we talk about interior design and we talk about these things, I never thought of them as just some things to acquire. I think it's more about surrounding yourself with beauty or having
Mm,
self-expression of the things that you value, and or drawing joy from colors or from shapes and things like
yeah,
that. I think,
right.
and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, you know, for you to surround yourself with beauty. I think that's an important thing.
Yes, if you were to take a pause now and bring like energy and awareness, what is alignment asking of you lately?
Mm. I I think alignment is asking me to be open. I think we're all living in the same world of where there's a lot of division of like I'm right, you're
Mm,
wrong, I'm this, you're that. There is a separation, right, from people. And if
right.
you're a yogi, like it's we are one, we're just all one people, right? And I think it's easier said than done because we all judge, we all
Yes.
criticize, we all feel appalled by
Mm,
things. And I'm not saying not to live in integrity, but I think to be open to other people's humanity. I think I'm trying to really, be more open and be more flexible about that, and seeing people's
right.
humanity before you see people's political party or whatever, But it's really difficult in this culture to remain open. I think it's a
Yes.
huge effort, but I think it's an effort worth putting forth. And I'm trying. It's not easy.
It's all we can do, really. Yes, and alignment means not always being happy and like everything is like in a row, but it can be uncomfortable, it can be tricky, it can be messy. But as long as you said, to keep coming back to yourself, to your authenticity, to your own belief system or your values, I think that's how we all stay true to ourselves. And then maybe that bigger understanding of we are all one comes.
Yes, yes. And I think alignment actually, if you're doing it right, I think it is definitely difficult because
Yeah.
there's a lot of temptation to not be aligned and to go this way or that way because
Mm,
it's easier, because it's more popular, because it makes you more money,
mm.
because it gets you to fit in certain groups and be accepted in certain ways.
Right.
When in fact, sometimes you have to let go of those things. Even, you might be better for your business, for example, to do this with this person, but you're not going to do it.
Mm.
So it's really a hard pivot. But if you are living in alignment, you do it anyway.
I like that so much. Any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with in terms of everything we talked about today? But alignment always keeps coming through, and energy and awareness. Those are the topics that I like to bring to the forefront.
I I think we need to be easier on ourselves too, because I think we
Mhm.
beat ourselves up a lot when we can't be
Yeah.
on alignment sometimes.
Right.
Um, and I think the important thing is to keep striving and to have awareness of when you're not in alignment, so then you can get back
Mm,
into alignment. I think
mm,
that's self-awareness. I think it's important. And then it's like meditating, like you're meditating and then you go off in some other random thoughts, but then you go back into it. And it's the same thing with alignment. I feel like you go on and then you get off track, but then you get back into the alignment. And I think that's sort of to dance.
It is. It's a daily dance and a process for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Patricia. It's been so lovely to talk to you
Thank you.
and
It's been my
really
pleasure,
just
really.
nice flowing conversation. Anything we should look out for in terms of your platform, or you can tell us how to get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Well, you can go to matriarch.com, and it's my newsletter that I send via Substack. I do this
Okay.
every week, every Thursday morning it goes out. It goes and we talk about a lot of different subjects, but it's all about women's wealth and well-being. So there's very different topics every week, not necessarily just one thing. And from my own personal advisory services, I usually advise brands and luxury brands and regular brands to thrive, and especially women-owned brands. And so people can get in touch with me at info@matriarch.com if they are interested in any of these services, or can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. We'll put it all in the liner notes as well. Thank you so much. And I wanted to thank everyone out there for listening. And as always, I am here to support your energy, awareness, and alignment. Thank you.
Thank you.